Okay, so what comes next in the game? And that's going to be Tier 2. So preparing for Tier 2 is going to be a significant milestone for everybody in the game, and you want the best possible start when it comes to Tier 2. I do want to preface this video, this is just the things that I'm doing. You can do all of them, you could do none of them. It's entirely up to you how you choose to prepare for the tier, but ultimately I want to give you a rundown from somebody that's played since Korean launch, exactly what you can do to maximize both your gear progression and also the Lucent income that you get when Tier 2 does hit. Now it's worth noting that Tier 2 loot itself is likely not going to be in the game until next year. AGS have said that what they're looking to do is release 2-star dungeons towards the middle or the end of November. Now these 2-star dungeons won't come with the tier 2 loot originally or to start with. That loot will be added in later. What's likely to happen is we get the new dungeons, and the loot that we get in them are things like the Shadow Harvester boots, the gloves for the Phantom set, and each dungeon will have a drop table that will consist of gloves, chest, helm, legs, boots. So this isn't necessarily to prepare for that. What this is to do is to get ready for when tier 2 loot actually enters the game. What I do want to say though is one of the things that I'm doing to get ready for the eventuality that the tier 2 or the 2-star dungeons are added to the game is I'm floating around the dungeon cap and only just doing the 3 a day that I need to prevent myself from capping. In addition to this, from the Battle Pass and from the Tracker Star Shop, I've not bought the Dimensional Contract tokens, and I'll be buying these on the very last day. This is just to make sure that I have as many available as possible to maximize the amount of dungeons that I can run. Because they're 450 tokens instead of 300 for loot from the 2-star dungeons, I want to make sure that I'm in the best possible position for that. So anyway, on to getting ready for Tier 2 itself. What am I doing and why? The first thing that I'm doing is I'm farming trait unlock stones. And the main way of doing this is through your dimensional soul shards. I'm just stocking up on these through doing random dungeons, stocking up on the chests to make sure that I can round off any numbers, and just picking up to keep these as close to each other as possible. So obviously I need to do some more temple to get some more Rex shards, but again we've got the chest here as well. And in addition to this, I'm also fleshing out my lithograph book and continuing to where I get items with non-desirable traits, slotting them into this to pick up the additional trait unlock stones. Once we do get tier 2 items in the game, the lithograph book will also get other options, and this will allow us to pick up even more trait unlock stones. And also when we get 2-star dungeons, they will drop a different dimension soul shard, and getting a full set of those dimension soul shards will give you 5 trait unlock stones instead of 3. So it's worth keeping that in mind, but ultimately saving up trait unlock stones, saving up conversion stones, and saving up trait extraction stones are all things that I'm doing at the moment. I've pretty much stopped selling anything on the marketplace or on the auction house, and you'll understand why as we go into the next couple of things. So what I'm also doing is saving any desirable traded items that are tier 1 epic versions. There's some in here that aren't desirable at the moment, but I'm using them for a different reason. But ultimately, what I want to be doing is stocking up on any of these. Selling things at the moment for 100 Lucent or 150 Lucent when I've got my gear at a stage that it's at just isn't worthwhile for me. And there's not enough of a profit margin on these to warrant doing it currently, considering the trait extraction costs. There are some things that I am still selling because some certain things sell quite well. So if I have a look at my sale history, you'll see that I did sell off a lot of the blues that were selling for an okay price, things like skill damage boost on necklace. And also, I sold off skill damage resistance ring. This was a mistake, selling off a critical hit chance for 58 Lucent and to only make 45. You should be holding on to things like this and not selling them at the moment. The reason why selling accessory traits is still okay is because ultimately we won't get any new tier 2 accessories that are worthwhile using until we get the Talandra accessories, and that's further down the line. So what I'm doing to prep for my armor and my weapons is something that you will do again in future to prep for the Talandra accessory upgrades. So in my inventory, I've currently got a piece of gear for each slot. And the idea is that these are cheap pieces of gear that cost nothing really to trade. So I can fully unlock all 3 traits on these pieces of gear. I haven't done it yet, but I am going to be doing this, and the idea is to stack up blessings ready for tier 2. So in tier 2, to have a 10% chance at adding or upgrading a trait, similar to how it is in tier 1 at the moment, you need to have the trait unlocked, and you need a tier 1 epic trait. So blue traits won't do it for you anymore. You're going to need the epic traits. And this is why you want to make sure that you have one of each tier 1 trait that you need to max weapon. So if you're maxing crit, you need 3 tier 1 crit traits. If you're maxing heavy, you need 3 tier 1 heavy traits, so on and so on. And you want to make sure that you have one of each of these traits or 3 of each of these traits for every piece of gear. And then in addition to that, you want one piece of gear per armor slot that is fully traded with all traits unlocked. And on top of that, you also want 7,220 blessing. It's going to take you a while to do it, but it's definitely easy enough to do with the time gap that we're going to have at the moment. And if you get started on this now, you're going to see the benefit of this in tier 2. To fully trait a tier 2 item, once all traits are unlocked, with the tier 1 epics, you need 8,100 blessing in total, and you get around 880 blessing for a fully traded tier 1 transferring into a tier 2. This leaves the need for 7,220 blessing, with 900 blessings per trait needed to guarantee the success of that trait. Now what this will allow you to do is make huge amounts of money in tier 2. Because what you can now do, if you have these blessings stacked up and you have them prepared and you have the tier 1 epics, you can sell every trait that you do not personally need. What you'll find is that if you're prepared, you can make thousands upon thousands of Lucent selling things like tier 2 heavy attack on weapons that you don't need because you have a weapon prepared with blessing that can transfer into your tier 2 weapon. So you're going to be using tier 1 traits while other people are buying tier 2 traits and using them. It's going to drastically cut down on the potential need to spend any Lucent, and if you're also preparing trait unlock stones, that's going to ease the transition even further. This is probably the biggest thing that I could possibly recommend doing, and it is massively, massively worth your time to do it. The next thing that I'm doing, and this is all speculation, is I'm holding on to the Abyss currency. Now, from data mined information, we've seen that like Korea, there are certain pieces of set gear or certain pieces of armor that can be crafted with Abyss currency. It's going to cost 80 Abyss currency and 10 Abyssal aggregate, and that's going to allow you to craft a tier 2 chest, and that's going to let you select items. Now, so far I think we've seen the chest pieces and the gloves. Having these ready, even if you don't need those items, is going to allow you to craft and lithograph those items straight away and sell them on the auction house. We've already seen from tier 1 people will pay stupid amounts of Lucent to be that little bit ahead. Now, if you prep the Abyss currency in advance, and it does happen that we get these bags and we're able to craft them, you can either, like I said, craft and sell, or you can craft the pieces that you need, potentially get those extra trait unlocks that you need, and it's going to cost you nothing. But the worst case scenario is, if we don't get any of that, we can use the Abyss currency that we've stocked up to craft the current chests, select items that have desirable tier 1 traits, and either sell the tier 1 traits that should be going up a little bit in price at that point, if not by a lot, or we can have that backup of having those traits available to throw into our tier 2 gear as we get it. So this is speculation still. We're not 100% sure if this is going to happen, but this is how it works on Korea at the moment, and it's very, very likely that that's going to be the case as well moving forward. The last thing that I want to touch on is going to be prepping alts for tier 2. Now, there really is no reason not to do this unless you don't have the time, and depending on how much time you have to play will dictate how many alts you can have. So you can have 2 characters on your current region. I have these 2, but if you go up here, you can also select different regions, and you can change this at will. There's no reason that you can't just do this all the time. And what you can do is you can create 2 alts on Eastern Americas. You can go to Western Americas. You can create alts on Western Americas. And as you'll see here again, it's going to let us choose to do 2 characters on this as well. And essentially this is going to be the same in each region. You're going to be able to make an alt or two alts in each region. Preparing alts doesn't mean that you have to have them massively geared. What I would suggest doing is preparing these characters, getting them to around 2500 combat power. It won't take you a massive amount of time. Maybe get them a little bit higher if you want to get them a little higher, but ultimately just to be able to farm your weekly scrolls and your lithographs. This alone is going to give you a supplemental income, but the other side of it is if you do have time to play them and you do want to gear them more, you can then also just have them sit there once they're geared until you get to tier 2, until tier 2 releases, and then you can use those characters to run dungeons and just sell the traits. You don't need to use the items, you don't need to upgrade the gear, you just sell the traits and bank the extra Lucent. And this is a big thing that people did at the start of launch, and this is how we made a lot of money, because each one of my alts have made around 20,000 Lucent each. And this is purely through just playing them once a week. I haven't spent a lot of time on them. I let things stack up, I buy their weekly scrolls, I go and run the contracts, run the scrolls, open all the bags, and then anything that I get, I sell. Simple and straightforward. But again, this is going to come down to how much time you have to play, and this is really just kind of a secondary thing to do. I would definitely suggest having an alt, but the number of alts really comes down to how much time you have to play. Anyway, those are just the first couple of tips and things that I'm doing to prepare for tier 2. There will be more things, and once I can kind of plan out a little bit more in advance what I'm going to do, the build that I'm going to run, I'll let you guys know as well. But hopefully this gives you an idea of things that you can be doing at the moment alongside progressing your character that's going to allow you to get ready for tier 2 and really compete with those people that are spending Lucent, or better still, farming the whales for all of that Lucent that they're going to be spending, and really use that to compete with them in terms of gear levels. You don't have to spend a lot of money on this game to be able to compete. You just have to plan in advance, be prepared, and know what to do and how to do it. I'll keep releasing videos. I'm not going to gatekeep information like this. Hopefully this kind of information is really useful to you and the community as a whole. If you've got any questions, drop in the comment section. Cheers, guys.